At my dad's over-the-top birthday, my stepmom called me the disappointment. I interrupted with a toast, then walked out forever and finally found my peace at my dad's birthday party. The name tag waiting for me didn't just say my name, it said, the disappointment. My stepmother chuckled. "Well, it's true," she said. So I stood up, tapped my glass gently, and announced, "Here's a toast, to the last time you'll ever see me." My dad looked stunned, but the real impact hit as I turned and calmly walked out the door. I'm 32F, and if you asked my father to describe me, he'd likely call me his biggest letdown. Not because I've done anything wrong or reckless, but simply because I chose a life outside the path he laid out for me. My dad, James, is a man who values control, appearances, and above all, loyalty. Loyalty that benefits him. When my parents split up, I was 10. It wasn't a messy divorce on the surface, but within a year, my dad had remarried Stephanie, who already had 2 kids, Hunter and Olivia. That's when things began to shift. At first, I genuinely tried. I was just a kid who wanted her dad to be happy. Stephanie put on a nice front, overly cheerful in public, always gushing about how we were all becoming one big family. She'd hug me just a little too tightly and say things like, "I just know we're going to be best friends." But privately, it became clear. Her only real concern was her own kids. My dad, who used to be actively involved in my life, gradually shifted his attention. He wasn't my dad anymore. He was their dad. It started with little things, missing. My soccer games, forgetting to pick me up, while never missing a recital or game for Hunter or Olivia. Eventually, it got worse. By 14, I was expected to babysit, do extra chores, and play the big sister role, while they got to live carefree. If I voiced frustration, my dad would sigh and say, "They need more attention. You're older. Be mature." Stephanie? She didn't sugarcoat it. She called me selfish. But what really broke things was when my dad emptied a savings account my mom had set up for my college education. She fought hard to get it back in court, but the trust was already gone. I was furious and barely spoke to him my final year of high school. When I left for college, funded completely by me, I made it a point to come home only on rare occasions. Over the years, our relationship remained strained. I'd still receive invites to family events, but they always felt like obligations, not genuine efforts to reconnect. To my dad and Stephanie, I was the difficult one. Hunter and Olivia, of course, were the golden children, which brings us to my dad's birthday party. Stephanie was throwing an extravagant event, big guest list, all about showing off. I wasn't planning to go until my aunt, one of the few who still had my back, convinced me. "Just drop by," she said. "Maybe things are different now." They weren't. From the moment I stepped inside, I felt the old, familiar tension. Faces I hadn't seen in years greeted me with polite nods instead of warmth. Conversations flowed around me like I wasn't there. I spotted my dad laughing across the room, but when he saw me, his smile faltered for just a second, like he hadn't expected me to show. That's when I saw it, the name tag table. Stephanie loved doing this at parties, name tags to help. People mingle. Most were standard. Uncle Mark, Cousin Rachel, Neighbor Tom. Then I saw mine. I froze. My tag had my name, but underneath, in smaller print, the disappointment. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe someone thought it was funny. But then I heard her laugh. I looked across the room and saw Stephanie at the IE bar, wine in hand, wearing that smug little grin she reserved just for me. I clenched the tag. My stomach turned. Some guests had started noticing me. No one said anything, but I felt the weight of their silent judgment. Don't cause a scene. I placed the tag back on the table, aligning it neatly with the others. For a moment, I almost laughed. This was so her, subtle enough that reacting would make me the problem. passive-aggressive to the core. I should have left, but not this time. Then I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was my aunt, brows furrowed, clearly having seen the tag. "Are you okay?" she asked. I forced a smile. "I'm fine," but I wasn't. This wasn't new. It was just the latest reminder that I didn't belong. Still, something inside me said, "No more." I picked up a glass of champagne, tapped it with my nail, and turned toward the room. If Stephanie wanted attention, I'd give it to her, but on my terms. A few guests looked my way. Even Stephanie paused, mid-sip, eyes narrowing slightly as she tried to read me. I smiled easily and let the moment linger before casually turning away, walking deeper into the party. The party was exactly what I expected. Flashy, curated, every detail planned to impress. This wasn't about celebrating my dad. It was about putting on a show, about displaying their perfect life, their perfect children. Hunter and Olivia were right in the center. Olivia gushed about her wedding. "Dad's paying for everything," she said proudly, twirling her giant diamond ring. "We want something elegant, not one of those tacky Pinterest things." I stifled a laugh. Olivia was always like this, charming, but performative. Hunter was by the bar, getting praise for his new job, which I'm almost sure he didn't earn. He never had to. My dad always cleaned up his messes, paved every path for him. I thought about joining their conversation, just to shake things up. But then I heard my dad's voice. "Oh," he said, already walking over, drink in hand. His expression was unreadable. "Didn't think you'd come." I gave a polite smile. "Wouldn't miss it." He nodded, looked around. "You've been keeping busy, I hear." There it was, his usual way of asking nothing real, just vague acknowledgments. "Yeah," I said. "Work's good. Bought a house last year." His brow lifted slightly. "A house?" "Yep." He took a sip, said nothing more. That's the thing with him. He struggles to accept any version of me that doesn't fit his narrative. Every success I've had without his support weakens the image he's built of me, the failure daughter. He clings to that version because it's easier to explain to others. Before he could come up with a response, Stephanie joined us. "Well," she said with a wide smile, "at least she finally did something responsible." The heat rose in my chest again. I turned to face her. She was all teeth and feigned affection, but I knew that look. She'd perfected it. "If you reacted, you were the issue. She was just being funny. You were too sensitive. I should have walked away, but I didn't." "Actually," I said, voice calm, "I've got to ask, who came up with the name tag?" Her expression faltered for just a second. "Oh, come on," she said, laughing. "You take everything so personally. It was a joke." "Right," I nodded. "Hilarious," she shrugged. "You know, if you weren't so angry all the time, maybe you'd—" I raised a finger, cutting her off. "Actually," I said, still smiling, "I think you're right." Her eyes narrowed. "About what?" "About making a joke." I turned slightly, lifted my glass, and said, "You know, now that I think about it, I have a joke too." Stephanie blinked, caught off guard. My dad shifted uncomfortably beside her. I gave a calm, deliberate smile. "I'd like to make a toast." The room began to quiet, not instantly, but gradually, as people noticed. Conversations slowed, and attention started to shift my way. People love a toast, especially one they didn't expect. I could feel my dad tense. Stephanie let out a short laugh, adjusting her stance like she was trying to wave it off. "Oh, come on. You don't have—" I raised my hand, still smiling. "I insist." More heads turned. Quiet murmurs passed through the crowd. A few guests casually grabbed their drinks, assuming this was just another feel-good family moment. They had no idea. Stephanie's smile began to tighten, but she kept her usual cool. She still believed I was the same person she had always dismissed. The one who stayed silent, absorbed the jabs, never pushed back. My dad, though, knew better. He stared directly at me for the first time that evening. Not past me, not around me, at me. I waited, letting the moment breathe before lifting my glass. To my father, I said, my tone light, almost casual. And to Stephanie, of course, because without them, I wouldn't have learned one of the most important lessons in my life. I paused, took a sip. Stephanie gave a nervous chuckle. Oh boy, here we go. A few others laughed quietly, thinking this was going to be some humorous self-deprecation. I smiled again. No, really, I mean it. Because sometimes we learn the most from the people who push us the hardest, don't you think? I looked at my father. Dad, you always said family should lift each other up, that we should be there to support and celebrate one another. He swallowed, his grip tightening on his drink. He didn't like where this was heading. I believed that for a long time. I truly did. But at some point I realized something. The room was nearly silent now. Stephanie's fingers gripped, her wine glass so tightly, I wondered if it might break. I realized that for some people, support only exists if you stay within the role they've written for you, whether that's the favorite or the failure. As long as you stay in your place, they're fine. But if you step outside it, I exhaled, shaking my head slightly. That's when they show you how they really feel. People shifted uneasily. Olivia glanced toward our dad, probably, waiting to take her cue from him. Hunter looked amused, like this was entertainment. Stephanie still wore her smile, but her hands were clenched. I used to think that if I just worked harder, proved myself, followed the rules, you'd eventually see me differently, I continued. My voice was quieter now, but steady. But I understand now. It was never about what I did or didn't do. Stephanie started to speak, probably to cut me off. But I didn't stop. I turned to my dad. Because in the end, I was never meant to succeed, was I? His expression changed, just for a moment. I let it hang there, then rolled my shoulders back. But I did succeed. I built something for myself. A life that doesn't depend on this family. And it's been the most peaceful and fulfilling time of my life. There were questions in the room, confused looks from people who'd only ever known the version of me that Stephanie and my father had shaped over the years. Stephanie gave another forced laugh. Come on, this is ridiculous. It's just a name tag. I looked at her. You're right. It is just a name tag. But it's also a pattern. A long line of little comments, little jabs, little reminders that I'll never be good enough in your eyes. My dad cleared his throat and stepped forward slightly. That's enough. I met his eyes. I agree. It is. Then, before anyone could say more, I raised my glass once more. To the last time you'll ever see me? The silence that followed was heavy. My dad stiffened. Stephanie's mouth fell open slightly, then closed again. Someone in the back muttered, Wait, what? Without another word, I placed my glass down, turned, and walked toward the door. They watched me go. The shock was clear, because this time was different. I glanced back once before stepping outside. But for the first time, I didn't feel like I was leaving something behind. I was walking toward something, toward peace, away from the chaos that had always defined this family. The cool air outside filled my lungs. It was done. I had cut ties the way I should have long ago. No more pretending. No more chasing approval from people who only accepted a version of me that never truly existed. That night, I drove home in silence. With each mile, I felt the weight, lifting. But even as I sat alone in my living room, part of me wondered, had I gone too far? Over the next few days, texts and calls came in. I ignored them. I stayed off social media, knowing the fallout would be messy. I had walked out on my dad's birthday. I had called out Stephanie, who had always worked to make me feel like an outsider in her perfect world. The family group chat lit up, but I stayed quiet. I didn't know if I was ready for the confrontation. Only my aunt, the one person who had always understood me, reached out, asking if I was okay. I told her I needed time. She didn't push. The next morning, my dad called. "Where are you?" His voice carried the same tone it always had, the one that made me feel like I was never enough. "I'm home," I said, "and I'm not coming back." His silence told me everything I needed to know. "You can't just walk away like this," he said eventually. "We're family. We stick together." I didn't hesitate. Not if sticking together means pretending to be someone I'm not. Not anymore. That was the last time we spoke. Weeks passed. I skipped every family event. I stayed away from birthdays, weddings, anything they organized. Most of the family either sided with my dad and Stephanie or pretended nothing had happened. I heard from others that my dad felt hurt, that Stephanie was furious, that Hunter and Olivia were disappointed in me for making a scene. None of it got to me. I knew I did what I had to do, and though it wasn't easy, I found a peace I hadn't felt in years. I haven't spoken to anyone in the family since. So now I'm wondering, was I wrong for walking out that way? For making that toast and cutting ties? Did I go too far, or was this long overdue? I know I'll never get my father's approval. I'll never be the daughter he wanted. But maybe, just maybe, I've realized I don't need to be. Let me know what you think. Was I out of line? Or was this the moment that needed to happen? If you liked this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. And drop a comment below. Did I do the right thing, or was the fallout too much?